This will be another non-paranormal episode about near-miss crime cases, specifically attempted kidnapping. I repeat it whenever I deal with crime stories from Korea, but I can't emphasize enough that Korea is a pretty safe country by all measures. Hard crimes such as homicide or gang violence are especially low in proportion as opposed to more white-collar crimes such as a fraud. The public overall care for keeping rules and order too, so much so you could just leave your valuables on the table when you go to toilet, for example. But contrast to the numbers, the overall anxiety about crime among the public is rather high. It's partially due to sensationalistic media and the country's culture that is very sensitive to whatever the issue of the day. And one of the crimes that people have high anxiety about, to the level of urban myths, is kidnapping. When I was little in the early 90s, there were lots of scare stories about taxis being used as a trap for kidnapping ploy. A decade on, there were rumors about even young men becoming a target to be sold off to a slave labor on a deep-sea fishing boats. In more recent years, reports about slavery in Salton on a remote island off the southwestern coast, or women groomed and threatened to sexual exploitation, fueled the public fear even more. But I honestly don't know if the level of anxiety reflects the reality. Last year, the U.S. State Department report on human trafficking degraded South Korea from Tier 1 to Tier 2 for the first time in 20 years, and that definitely signifies the downward trajectory. But considering other countries in the same tier include Japan, Denmark, and Switzerland, I don't think it's not in any way alarming level yet. As usual, all the stories I read today are allegedly true stories, but there's no proof if they really are. I suggest you listen to them with a pinch of salt. At worst, they'll serve as a cautionary tales and an interesting reflection of Korean people's anxiety about kidnapping. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by host Anthony. I was driving from Wonju to Jinju City then. I urgently needed to take a leak, so made a stop at the rest station. It was the evening of a big football match, so the inside the station was quiet. Everybody, staffs and customers alike, glued to the TV screen at one corner. Back in my car, I took some time to refer the map to my destination, when some thuggish guy came over. Without a word, he tried my car door, which, thank God, I had locked. He knocked on the window, and I lowered it just enough to hear what he had to say.
"Mister, I got a few leftover boxes of fish with me. Would you like them?"
The guy said. "No thanks," I said.
"I'm not selling it to ya. Just take them off of me. I wouldn't say no if you'd buy me a bowl of noodle soup from the rest station, though."
"Well, I'm on my way to somewhere, you see," I said. It was already dark, and there was nobody around in the parking lot. I instinctively felt it was not a good idea to get off the car. But the guy wouldn't take no.
"Just take them. I too want to go back home in Busan quickly to catch the rest of the football game."
"Sorry, but no thanks."
"What are you afraid of?" "Okay, just open the boot. I'll load the box up for you."
But what if he didn't close the boot again? Then I could not help but get off the car to close it. I just rolled back the window without a word. The guy reacted with a barrage of swears, really nasty ones. I think he thought he could work me enough to get off the car. But I just quietly drove off. I kept watching the guy through the rearview mirror as I drove off the parking lot. He walked over to a truck. behind which a couple of other burly guys appeared from. I might have overacted, but the more I think about it, the more suspicious I find the situation. The guy didn't have any hint of Busan dialect, though he claimed his home was there. And by the way, that motorway was definitely not an ideal route to Busan either. If he was such a fan of football match, why didn't he watch it with others in the rest station? And if he was so desperate to get rid of the fish, why didn't he hang around the main entrance of the station rather than the remote, quiet corner I parked? I don't like to be suspicious of people, but such is the world we live in. It was in June. I love dogs, and it was my daily routine to check on Dog Lovers Community Board. And one day I saw an ad that a family in Gyeonggi province was giving away puppies for free, that their family dog had an accident with a neighbor's dog and gave birth to 10 puppies. I'm sharing flat with a mate, so have been apprehensive about having a dog of my own, but they claimed it to be a small breed and seemed to be too good a chance to miss. I called the provided number, and a middle-aged sounding lady answered. "Excuse me, but I saw your ad on the Dog Lovers Board, and I'm interested. Do you still have the puppies?" I said.
"Oh, yes. There's one last one still with us. It's a cutie,"
she said, and carried on talking about how cute and lovable her dog and the puppy were. "Do you perhaps have a photo of the puppy to show me?" I said.
"Oh, dear, I have none, and I'm out at the moment. Why don't you come over here and see it for yourself? You'll fall in love immediately."
I was a bit reluctant because of the distance I had to travel, because I live in Central Seoul. But my flatmate suggested that we could do with some fresh air, and I set the date to visit the lady. The day before the appointment, I called the same number to double-check. This time, a guy answered it. "Hello? I inquired you about your puppy yesterday, and just want to ask you the exact direction before I visit you tomorrow," I said.
Yes. Just get off the metro station and you'll find a taxi stand right in front of it. Right next to it is my place. About what time are you aiming?"
The guy said. "Between 2 and 3, I think. By the way, I talked to a lady yesterday."
She's my wife. She's not available at the moment.
So, the following day, I and my flatmate took about 2 hours' journey and arrived at the metro station. It seemed the station was pretty new, and outside it was hardly anything and any passerbys around. There indeed was a taxi stand, but there was but a single taxi waiting. I wasn't sure, so called the number again. The guy from the previous day answered.
Excuse me. We're not in at the moment. What should we do? Why don't you take a taxi and come to us then? We'll pay for the taxi.
The guy said. I sensed something was not adding up, but flatmate complained that she was too tired and hot, so we hopped on the taxi. I told the driver our destination, but the driver responded,
"Sorry, ladies, but nothing comes up on navigation by that address."
I called the number once again and handed the phone to the taxi driver. They seemed to discuss about the details of directions, and the driver finally started the car. But I could sense the driver kept tilting his head and eyeing on me through the rear view mirror.
"You seem to new in this area. Are you visiting?"
Driver said. "No, we've come to pick up a puppy, I said.
A puppy? Really?
Well, what about it? I hit it back because I felt touchy by then for the sense something wasn't going right.
Nothing. Some time ago, I gave a ride to a couple of young guys, probably about the same age as you ladies. They too said they were picking up a puppy. And if my memory serves me right, I think it was to this same address. I remember they got off on an empty field, and I just went on my way because it was none of my business. But isn't it odd? There was no house there, but an empty field with some greenhouses.
I didn't know what to think. I could ask only after a good few seconds. And what happened to the boys?
I don't know. All I can tell is there is no bus and no other traffic around that address, and I'm more or less the only taxi serving this area, and I didn't get a call from the guys again.
After a pause, the driver asked,
So, what do you want? Shall I carry on to the address, or shall I take you back to the metro station?
We chose the latter. We thanked him many times before getting off, and he told us,
If you see any ad about puppy in this area, beware. As far as I know, there's no dog breeder or such in this area. Spread the word in the community to prevent others from falling for the trick.
So I wrote a post about the whole saga on the dog lovers community board as soon as I got back home. I called the same number just in case it was a misunderstanding, but the number wasn't active anymore. What would have been waiting for us there if we had arrived at the address they gave us? I'm a 27-year-old guy. I just read a news headline about the new type of kidnapping, and I can't help myself of getting suspicious about what happened to me a month ago if I wasn't a target for such a trap myself. I had then a business to visit Cheonan City. Had to get up at the crack of dawn, take a bus to go to the central station to catch my train to Cheonan. And at the bus stop, somebody poked at my side. I was startled and turned around to find a little middle-aged man. I clearly remember his face because he looked quite alike to a famous baseball player of the team I support. And that man had just poked me with his mobile phone. What do you want? I was saying, but he cut in. I'm a detective on duty. Take the phone and explain whereabout we are now. Hurry! What the... I didn't quite know what to think about the situation, but I just shrugged and did as he asked, that it was just a few meters from Shillin metro station. But the little guy wouldn't let me go. He said some mumble-jumble about that he didn't know the area and that I should help him to find where the other guy on the phone. What? Then what was all the trouble of giving him the direction in the first place? I concluded he couldn't be what he claimed himself to be. His whole attitude, the way he spoke, didn't look like a detective. So I hopped on the first bus that came, even though that was not the one I was waiting for. But then the little guy followed me on, which didn't make sense. Why didn't he rather ask other people at the bus stop if getting a direction was his objective? He blocked my way and said, I told you I'm a police on duty. Come on now and help me. But by then he lost any credibility. If he was so much in a hurry, what was he doing on the bus? Well, if you really are, show me your badge, I said, to which the guy reacted with a scoff. Ah, you don't trust the police? he said, and fumbled his hand in the back pocket. Frankly, I wouldn't have been surprised had he produced a knife from the pocket. The whole situation felt that much uncanny. He took out his wallet, but he wouldn't open it to show his badge.
Well, I'm not exactly an officer, but the guy on the phone is. Do I really have to reveal it this much? He's after me, you see? After me.
He said in a low, threatening voice. His explanation didn't make sense whatsoever, but the threat in his voice frankly made my big boy's knees shiver a bit. What are you talking about? You said you are a detective, I protested, but the guy only countered it with more nonsenses. I didn't have time to waste, couldn't understand why such a thing should be happening to me, and above all, my gut feeling was telling me to get out of the situation as soon as possible. I jumped off the bus at the very next stop, and the guy kept following me off the bus. I looked around desperately to get a taxi, but there was none in the early hour of the day. It was then a car stopped in front of me quietly. It was a taxi, but I didn't even realize it for a few seconds because all the signs were off. There was already a passenger in the passenger seat too, a man looking like a dried-out sardine.
"Hop on,"
the driver said.
"This customer's getting off just down there."
Should have known it was all too weird. But the little guy was following me, and I hopped on the taxi and gave a quick glance back at the little guy before I closed the door. He was now just standing there looking at me. Something gave me a chill. I quickly looked around inside the taxi and noticed the meter was off. It wasn't that I understood what was going on in that split second, but it all just clicked in my mind. I jumped off the taxi again.
"Where are you going? Hop back,"
the driver said. "It's okay, just go," I said. And just then I saw the little guy approaching. Trapped! My instinct was screaming. It was really the instinct of a trapped animal. I ran across the 8-lane road away from them. Fortunately, I could soon find a proper taxi and could catch my train on time. But it was one sweaty morning. I'm not even small and weak-looking guy, and I've never imagined I would become a target of such a ploy. I knew a police station was nearby, but in that moment, I couldn't even think it was an option. I can't say for 100% sure that it was an attempted kidnapping, but I'd just say to stay alert no matter you are a woman or a burly man. It's now more than 10 years ago, but I still shudder when I think of the night. I was 19 and had just taken SAT. I wasn't happy with the result, and to forget all the busy thought about my future, I decided to take a trip on my own for the first time. Jeju Island was my destination, and because clearing my mind was the goal of the trip, I decided to take a train and boat rather than hopping on a plane. After 2 days of journey, I finally got off at the port in Jeju. I had no plan at all, and just followed where my feet took me. Just outside the port, a taxi stopped by me and chatted me up.
"Where are you heading to, young man?"
I'm just looking for somewhere to stay for a few nights," I said. The driver said that he knew a perfect place for me and told me to get on. I said no thanks for no other reason than having just little cash on me, but the driver insisted.
"Don't worry about the money. It's for free."
I should have thought it was odd, but I was young and foolish and just thought what a good luck it was. The taxi drove a short distance to a shabby 2-story house at a remote corner. An old couple came out and said they were running a private lodging there. I could not see the sign of other guests, but it was still early morning and the charge was low enough to agree to stay there. When I got back to my room in the evening, I found I wasn't there alone anymore. In front of the room next door were multiple pairs of shoes and the light was on. From my room, I could hear people talking in low voices in the next room, but they didn't go out or do anything in particular. I didn't suspect anything. I just had some snacks for dinner and checked the photos I took during the day. I went to bed by midnight, but it was a stormy night. It felt to me like the whole house was shaking and I could not fall asleep easily, though I was tired enough. Somebody knocked on the door.
Are you asleep?
It was the owner of the lodging. No, not yet. What's the...
Go to bed soon. It's late,
he said and went away. That weird interaction woke me up completely. I just turned on the TV and watched the midnight program, and a couple of hours must have passed that way.
Are you asleep?
It was the old man again. Not yet. The wind is too loud, I said.
Well, try and sleep now,
said he and went away. Now, it was nearly 4.
Are you asleep?
It was him again. No, not yet,
Why are you still up? For what? Sleep now.
shouted the old man, shaking my door. Now I could not deny something was terribly wrong here. All right, I go to bed. Good night. I turned off the light and waited a while. Then I took my backpack and tiptoed out. The lighting next door was still on, though I could not hear anything. Stormy wind was raging in the pitch dark outside, but I had no choice and walked the direction of the port.
Hey, where are you going?
The old man was chasing after me. I just ran as fast as I could and made it to the port. I asked for the ticket for the soonest boat that went to the mainland, but the staff said all routes were cancelled due to the storm. I felt quite lost. But it was out in the public space with other people around, so I took a seat on a bench to catch my breath. Meanwhile, the old man caught up with me and sat next to me.
You didn't even check out. You can't go anywhere in such a stormy weather,
he said. I must go back home. By the way, what are you doing here yourself? What he replied was enough to alarm me, to make me take a taxi to the airport. There I waited 6 hours till the storm calmed down and could fly back home safely. What the old man said was,
I'm here to meet my son. He'll arrive soon.
I don't know if he really had a sinister motive or not, but I'm glad I didn't stay on to find out. It's a story my PE teacher told us during a class. As a uni student, he rented a room for himself. As usual for a student, he hunted around for the cheapest option possible and ended up in a rather rough part of the town, notorious for various petty crimes and kidnapping. But being a sport major and various martial art training under his belt, my teacher didn't worry for himself at all. Since when he heard a rumor going around in the area that some nutcase woman would randomly ring the bell and would stab whomever opened the door. Teacher was skeptical. It wasn't reported in the news. Surely it was just an urban myth, wasn't it? One weekend, he was getting ready to go out. When he was about to put on his shoes, somebody rang the doorbell. Was it one of his mates, he thought. But no. Normally his mates, all being rough, tough sports majors, would be just loudly banging on his door, shouting,
"Open up, you son of a bitch!"
or something like that. But whoever was on the other side of the door just rang the bell and kept quiet. Teacher wasn't sure what to do when the letter slit on the door opened up and a hand poked in. It seemed to gesture to grab something, possibly the leg of the person who would have been standing there to open the door. Teacher quickly and quietly moved away from the door and pretended to sleep on the sofa that was facing the door. The hand disappeared, only to come back in, but this time holding a small kitchen knife. That rumor about the mad woman was true after all. The woman must have been skeletal. Through that narrow space, she managed to push in her entire arm. Watching all this, teacher first felt a bit of a panic, but then soon found the whole situation rather nonsensical. He would just take the knife away and scare the woman away. What could such a bony woman could do against the burly young man that he was? But then,
"It's somebody in,"
a male voice said behind the door.
"Yeah."
Replied the woman, pulling her arm out.
"Where?"
"He's sleeping on the sofa."
"Well, we won't get him then. Let's try another."
And they moved away. It wasn't a case of a mad woman after all. She was but a decoy. A mad act would irritate some poor victim enough to open the door, and behind her was the guy. For what though? To rob? To kill? To kidnap? Who can tell? Hi, it's Anton here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I must say, while back in Korea recently, I felt really relaxed and carefree when it comes to crime, despite of its big towns being incredibly busy and densely populated. Countries like Germany and UK, that I'm most familiar with outside Korea, are also relatively safe. But in a city like London, one does need to stay relatively alert. I don't know, maybe it was a false sense of security being back in my motherland again. What about you? Do you feel overall safe and relaxed where you live now? Is there a lot of urban myth type of stories about crimes and kidnapping akin to today's stories? Let me know in the comment. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. My channel is all about weird, scary and paranormal stories straight from Korean web communities. Whether you are interested particularly in Korea or just scary stories in general, I'm sure my channel has something to offer. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters enjoy early access to my new video. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.